the eye. May my mind come alive today to the invisible geography that invites me to new frontiers, to break the dead shell of yesterdays, to risk being disturbed and changed. May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but to do at last what I came here for, and waste my heart on fear no more. Quite a wonderful poem. Quite a wonderful poem. In fact, such a wonderful poem I could read it 2 or 3 times and then I wouldn't have to give you the talk that I so earnestly prepared. However, I did earnestly prepare it. And I earnestly prepared it because, and actually I prepared it also with quite a lot of lightness of heart, because I wanted to speak to you today about what the Buddhists call the Noble Eightfold Path, and very particularly about the first of the 8 of the Eightfolds, which is the right view. I think it is the most dramatic and invitational way to begin a year together. But I also want to speak about the heart. I want to speak about the heart as a place of refuge. In fact, there is no other refuge but the heart and the soul and the heart-soul and the soul-heart. I don't mean refuge either as a place to escape. I mean refuge as a place to resource yourself and find the help that you need. Otherwise, we would be at a loss as to how to move through a violent world in a non-violent way. We need, at this time, to be exceptionally bold, exceptionally vigorous in how we generate those energies of the heart. And right view has something so marvelous to tell us exactly about that. So, John O'Donoghue's words, "May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love," really sings and rings to this. Now, some of you may not know that the Eightfold Path emerges from the 4th of the Four Noble Truths that are kind of the foundation, the pillars, if you like, of Buddhist philosophy. So let me tell you a little bit about those Four Noble Truths, which, by the way, in Chinese Buddhism are called the Four Holy Truths, which is a very beautiful way also of thinking about them, of thinking about wholeness and holiness in our lives. So the first 3 of those truths tell us something really important that we do know, but we forget. So the first of them is that in life there is suffering, and the word is dukkha, which actually means bitterness. Bitterness. In life there is bitterness. Let us acknowledge the truth of that. It's what we share. We fail. We get sick. We lose the people that we love. We are hurt, we are disappointed, or we behave very badly. All of those things happen. And also, we absolutely must, as conscious beings, face the fact that however long we're here, it's extremely brief. We must also face the fact that life is unjust. That is the first noble truth, that in life there is suffering. And the second noble truth is that we can begin to understand what causes suffering, and that a great deal of what is suffering in this world, and a great deal of the suffering that is caused in this world, is quite unnecessary. And we are causing some of it. And we are failing also to heal some of it. So this is quite a strong call. Yes, there is suffering in the world, but the second truth is that some of it is absolutely unnecessary. And we only have to turn on the news of a night to really recognize that. And the third noble truth is that there is cessation, that suffering ceases. That suffering ceases. So don't do what makes life harder. Notice what makes life harder. Notice what heals. Do far less of what makes life harder. Isn't it the most obvious thing in the world? Why are we so slow to learn this? Do much more of what brings joy. Why are we so slow to learn this? So maybe the fourth noble truth gives us some clues. We actually need guidance. Most of us need to lean upon one another and take guidance from one another, and take guidance from the great teachers who have walked on this earth and shared the fragilities of life with us. So the fourth noble truth is that there is a path, a marga. And in fact, you know, we used to have a large group of people in Australia called Ananda Marga, which meant the path of bliss. Marga is the path. And this path is the eightfold path. And it is the following of this path. It is the following of this path that leads us towards behavior that is ethical. In other words, behavior that not only gives us no harm, but causes no harm to others. And in this, we begin to learn something vital about our interbeing, which is that we do not grow up on our own. We do not grow wiser on our own. We do not heal on our own. As we heal others. As you heal me. We are in this life together. Now I'm going to tell you a wonderful little story that has a great big message. And the story is about the historical Buddha. He gave that teaching on the Four Noble Truths as his first teaching after his enlightenment, when he was in his middle 30s. 45 years later, when he was near death, a young man came to him and asked him about the enlightenment status of a couple of other teachers. Were those teachers up to the mark? Were they up to scratch? Were they kosher? I wonder if you're thinking about what the response of the Buddha might have been to this innocent question. Well, two things are remarkable. One is that although he was near his own death, near his own time, and of course he was perfectly aware of that, not just at the physical level, but also at much more transcendent levels, he made time for this question, which might have, in other circumstances or with a different teacher, been regarded as too trivial to care about. And the second thing is that he answered in a most fabulous way that really sings to our time. He said to this young man, don't worry about their enlightenment. Don't worry yourself with how enlightened they are. Ask yourself, how liberated am I? How liberated am I from ignorance about who and what I am? And how liberated am I about the conduct needed in order not only to heal myself, but to heal our world? In fact, he also said, if you follow the Eightfold Path, wherever the Eightfold Path is practiced, joy, peace, and insight are in that place. Now that's also quite a profound teaching, because it means that we're not reliant only on the external circumstances of our lives. We are actually reliant upon the transformation that happens within. Okay, so what were the eight? They all begin with right. Right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, and they're all interdependent, and they are all dependent on the first one, right view. Now, when I was writing this, when I was writing about right view, I thought, I must point out that it doesn't mean right in the sense that there is one right way in a kind of fundamentalist or ideological way of thinking. On the contrary, there's nothing in these teachings that invites us to divide one part of our thinking from another. So think about right much more in terms of strengthening, opening, compassion building, rather than right as opposed to wrong. The other thing is that this is a marga. It's a path. It's a process, which means that you don't have to arrive the first time you think about it. This is literally an unfolding fold path. I love that. I absolutely love that, because it also so strongly counters the ridiculous and extraordinarily painful teachings we have all around us about perfection, as though we should only do something if we are going to be extraordinarily good at it, or we should only do something if we wish to attain some degree of perfection. And of course, the shadow of perfection, which is longer than any shadow almost we can imagine, is failure and lack of self-respect. Whereas if we're following a path, we can grow in self-respect as we discover more and more about it. Just a day or two ago, my little granddaughter, who's 4, but just started school, big school as she constantly tells me, big school, told me that when they do their work, they're not allowed to talk, so that it will be perfect. I was completely horrified, but I knew I couldn't really rush up to her little public school to tell them what I thought, because my daughter would be appalled. Because when my daughter was about 12, she used to say, if I was beginning to speak out, "Don't say anything, Mum, don't say anything." But I did feel heartbroken. And then I said to Madeline, but every class needs a few people who are a little bit naughty. So then she told me, well, some people do talk a bit. Actually, I talk a bit. So I was hugely relieved, because this notion of A, not talking and expressing oneself in the 3rd week of school, and B, somehow hoping that one's work will be perfect, was really tragic. Okay, so let's set perfection aside, as we are not having to go to that particular school. And let's think about right view and what it offers. That what it offers is an invitation. What it offers is an invitation to view life and ourselves, our pettiness, our problems, our tragedies, our heartbreaks, our anguish, our insufficiency, and also our brilliance, and our courage, and our beauty, with far greater love and acceptance. In fact, it's hard for me to imagine that we can grow into who we can be without thinking about this question of view. View itself brings you spiritual power. It also, and this is just as vital, it brings you the power to choose and to create meaning. It brings you an elevation of conscience as well as consciousness. As your view becomes more and more conscious, so your power to choose grows. So right view also teaches us that our choices are ours to make. Now, we again live in a culture in which blaming is almost habitual in many lives. And right view brings us back to the place of responsibility, the place of self-respect, and the place of responsibility. How can we change for the better our view, out of which action emerges? It also teaches us that perception is a very fragile thing. Perception emerges from the conditioned mind. We make up our minds according to the way in which we have made up our minds. So we interpret situations rather than trying to see through them to the truth of what exists. That's why people can get so trapped in ideology or so trapped in their own self-righteousness. And when I say people, I mean all of us, any one of us. We can become so trapped by our own perceptions that we forget how to look through them to see what the truth of the situation may be. And I have a lovely example of that because I felt it needed an example. And the example comes from Thich Nhat Hanh, who, as a much younger man than we know him now, went to the United States as a Vietnamese Zen monk through the time of what was called in America the Vietnamese War, and was called in Vietnam the American War. And he was trying to bring to the American people a consciousness and conscience that the people that they were bombing so recklessly were actually men, women and children, not entirely unlike themselves. So he was repeatedly asked, are you from the north or are you from the south? In other words, are you pro-communist or are you with us, anti-communist? And Thich Nhat Hanh would reply, I am from the center. It is from the place of the center that we will get the fullest view. And if you think about many of the questions in our society that are so painfully divisive, let's at least consider answering them. I am neither this nor that. I am from the center, and I am living also from the center, from the divine center, that is more than who you perceive me to be. Whatever you perceive me to be, I am more than that. I am living from a divine center. I want to leave you with some practical moments. I want you, sometimes at least, in thinking about right view, to ask yourself, what am I not seeing? And I also want you to remember that we don't see through the physical eye. We see through the eyes of vision and perception. This is something that's happening in our minds, not just through the organ that we call the eye. Check things out. Check things out. Be unafraid to check them against your own experiences and revelation, the experience also of the other. Let that shift your view when your view needs shifting. I also find it immensely helpful to ask myself, how would this look from the soul's perspective? How would this look from the perspective of the heart? What is the heart ready to tell me here? And this requires some humility, because we must also go inward and listen to what the heart may have to say. There is a most beautiful, beautiful Sufi phrase which says, "Look through the eyes of the beloved, and you will see the beloved everywhere." This is a path worth walking, not for our sakes only, but for the sake of all of us. And the more of us who walk, hop, jump, dance, or have to be helped along this path, the merrier and the more consoling it will be. I also discovered that the Sanskrit words for right view are samyak drishti. Drishti is when we bless from the depths of our soul through the eyes to the depths of the soul of another. So what we're talking about here is something really profound that we can afford, and the world asks us to afford, to look at it, at each other, and at ourselves through these eyes of drishti. May my mind come alive today to the invisible geography that invites me to new frontiers, to break the dead shell of yesterdays and to risk being disturbed and changed. May I have the courage today to live the life that I would love, to postpone my dream no longer, but do at last what I came here for, and waste my heart on fear no more. Peace in your hearts, peace in our world.